So our final presentation before lunch is one of our two companies who was unfortunately delayed by the weather and not able to make it out to see the wonderful snow of New York City. But they were gracious enough to pre-record their presentation. Amaero Limited trades on the ASX under the symbol 3DA and cross-trades these shares on the OTCQX market under the symbol AMROF. We are pleased to welcome remotely Hank Holland, Chairman and CEO.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. I'm Hank Holland, Chairman and CEO of Amaero. Appreciate the time today. What I thought I would do is begin the presentation with an overview of who is Amaero, give you a sense of the thematic opportunity that we are at the fulcrum of, drill down a bit on the advanced materials side of our business, the advanced manufacturing side of our business, growth opportunities, a business update, and then leave it at that. Hopefully this will be a helpful overview. Again, appreciate the time and those of you interested in the ASX positions on the OTC. Amaero is a US-based business. We are relocated from Australia in July of 2023. Since then, we have established the largest US domestic production and the lowest cost production for refractory spherical alloy powders and titanium alloy powders. Located about 100,000 square feet outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we also have pioneering experience in PM HIP manufacturing of near net shape parts. Very important capability that is relieving strain in the large castings and large forgings ecosystem. As you will see, we have assembled a leading technical team in the US, have significant proprietary know-how, and again, have very favorable thematic tailwinds that are behind us. A bit about the overview of the business, again, both on the advanced materials side and the advanced manufacturing side. Advanced materials, as many of you may well know, 3D printing or additive manufacturing. The source, if you will, the feedstock is powder. Think of this as the ink cartridge in your HP printer. Again, the spherical powders are the cartridge, if you will, or the input that is used in additive manufacture or 3D printing. About 80% of that powder market is what we would think of as commodity alloys, stainless steel, nickels, coppers, such as that. The top 20% of the market, lower volume, higher value, are refractory alloys, such as niobium, tungsten, tantalum, moly, zirconium, and then titanium. Titanium being the largest part of that market. That is exclusively where Amaero focuses. We have the most advanced technology in the world, the next generation of an EIGA, or electrode induction gas atomizer. We have what's called the EIGA Premium. Significant higher yield than the prior generation, uses less argon gas, which is the second largest consumable. And again, very, very high quality powder. The two most accepted manners of atomization is plasma atomization, used by companies such as AP&C and Tekna, and gas atomization, used by companies such as Amaero and the prior generation ATI in the US. These additive manufacturing or 3D printing applications are used extensively in defense, space, medical, and other industrial end markets. The other side of our business, and again, quite unique in that we're both a material business and a manufacturing business, is powder metallurgy, hot isostatic press, or PM HIP manufacturing of near net shape parts. This is particularly important in the aftermath of the Ukraine war, in that we have got a significant challenge with large castings and large forging supply chain in the US. PM HIP manufacturing has been used for about 70 years. It is one of the very few technologies that has a sufficient maturity that can be immediately inserted. We've worked very closely with the US Navy. You'll see in a bit validation of that via a letter from the US Navy, as well as an event that was convened at Amaero back in December. And PM HIP is particularly well suited for what we call high mix, low volume production. So if you've got a single part of which 1,000 of which will be manufactured, it makes sense to invest in investment tooling and so forth. But if you've got a part of which you might only need a dozen parts in a single year, but again, mission critical, high value parts, PM HIP is fantastic for that type application. Very interesting leadership team. One of the things that is unique about Amaero, I'll be an engineer by background. I've spent my entire career in private equity and finance. My private equity firm Pegasus owns about 30% of Amaero. I have personally funded about half of that position. Again, very unique alignment of interest with our other shareholders. We own 288 million shares of Amaero. Every single share of that stock was paid for alongside other investors in placements or on-market or off-market activity. Very different than candidly I see with many ASX companies where CEOs or management are given significant stock in the way of performance rights or other grants. Again, in this case, all of our shares were paid for alongside other investors. We've assembled the leading technical team in the US. That's the reason we work so closely with US labs and other defense primes and counterparts in the US. As I mentioned, we're now in a fully built out 100,000 square foot facility near Chattanooga. We fully commissioned our equipment, and just this year we have begun scaling from a commercial standpoint. I'll move somewhat quickly through these early slides, and then again back towards the back of the presentation, focus a bit more about the business in its current state, growth opportunities, and a business update. One of the important things about Amaero is we're almost 3 years into, it'll be June of this year, almost 3 years into a 3-year capital investment plan. That was $72 million Australian, or about $56 million US. We will complete that plan June of this year. In doing so, we will have fully commissioned at that point 3 IGAs. Today we've commissioned 2. A third one will be commissioned in June. We've also ordered a 4th IGA. We've ordered argon recycling, which again will further lead to our lower unit cost economics. We've completed the fit out of our facility, and we built significant inventory of feedstock. So unlike other companies that may well only now be getting started in a build out, we've got a significant first mover advantage, which is important given the state of the opportunity in the US from a reshoring standpoint and the US defense industrial base opportunity. I would also say, and again, part of this is when you're investing the capital, your own capital, I think you tend to be more disciplined. We have raised about $150 million Australian over the past 4 years. You'll notice about 75 million US, okay, or over $100 million Australian is on our balance sheet in the form of tangible assets and cash. We finished December 30th with about $50 million cash in our balance sheet. And as you see here, we will finish June with about $100 million invested in the plant. So again, very disciplined use of capital. So many of the companies that I see raise capital, it goes out in OPEX. They raise capital, it goes out in OPEX. Very different here as far as our highly disciplined use of capital. Significant thematic tailwinds, and these are primarily twofold. Those of you that follow the US market, as you know, there is a significant uptick in spending on the defense industrial base. Prior to the current Trump administration, the US was spending at a trough level of a percent of GDP on defense since the Second World War. Again, we are spending at a trough level, a percent of GDP since the Second World War. The same was true with our NATO allies. We've seen a significant uptick in US spending on a percent of GDP. And as you're well aware, also our NATO allies have committed to spend much more on their defense spending. This has resulted in expansion and candidly what were already atrophied defense industrial based capabilities that we're having to significantly address resiliency issues in the US, single point of failures issues in the US, and scale this capability. At the very same time, let me actually focus on one of the points before I change the page here. On the right-hand side of this page, at the very same time, the Trump administration has had significant policy initiatives aimed at attracting the reshoring of sovereign manufacturing and supply chain capabilities. You've seen in the news, obviously, companies such as Apple, NVIDIA, the chip manufacturers, medical companies, and so forth, that are trying to better align their manufacturing footprint and their supply chain footprint with their end market. The end market being primarily a market that is focused in the US. This is driving significant interest by large multinational companies, particularly US-based multinational companies that are bringing that manufacturing and supply chain back home. And this has been a significant tailwind for Amaero. Amaero's entire corporate strategy has been driven by addressing demand pull or addressing key vulnerabilities in the supply chain. In many cases, either we are a sole supplier or we have but one or two primary competitors. To give you a sense, there are a lot on this chart, but this kind of outlines the supply chain for additive manufacturing. On the far left, you start with the mining of these critical minerals, be it refractory or titanium. You then have some upstream processing. We buy bar stock is what is used in our atomization process. On the powder producer side, as you see here, as far as refractory, we have but one primary competitor that is qualified in the US. This is about a $20 billion market cap public company called ATI, the old Allegheny Technology. On the titanium side, we have two primary competitors, both of which use what's called a plasma atomization, both of which happen to be based in Canada, APC and Techna, and that is it. So again, very limited competition on the refractory and the titanium spherical powder side of our business. The broader powder side is what we would think of as more commodity. These are nickels, stainless steels, copper. The leading companies down here are companies such as Carpenter, Höganäs, GKN, or Sandvik. Again, the importance here is these are non-reactive metals, a different technology, and candidly an easier powder to produce than when you're dealing with reactive powders or reactive metals up top. If you then go to the right and say, what is that powder used for? The large applications such as laser powder bed fusion, or what we think of as 3D printing. Again, amongst the largest suppliers and printers in the US, Amaero has structured 5-year preferred or exclusive supply agreements with these parties, these leading companies. So in the case of Castillon, Dr. Yuping Gao is the foremost expert at printing C103 and refractory alloys. Here we have a 5-year preferred supply agreement. Knutz-Godwin, who's expanding their laser powder bed additive manufacturing footprint by 125,000 square feet this year. Approximately 75,000 to 100,000 square feet of that will be expansion of their titanium printing. And we are the exclusive supplier to Knutz-Godwin on the titanium side. Velo 3D, the only made in USA equipment OEM. So their hardware is manufactured in the US, the software is written in the US, the data is stored in the US. Again, we have a 5-year exclusive supply agreement for refractory and titanium powders. Cold spray is an interesting technology in that it consumes a lot of powder and it's an adjacency capability to laser powder bed. Here too, we have an exclusive 5-year agreement with Titomic, another ASX listed company, for spherical refractory and titanium powder. We announced, as I'll talk about later, a purchase order in December for a really interesting application with Titomic we're working with a defense prime with. Below that, you see PM HIP manufacturing, again, of near-net shaped parts. Here in the US, we have but two competitors, and we are the leading supplier in this area. And again, a lot of very interesting pioneering work that we've done with the US Navy in particular in this area. To the right, we're supplying end customers in aerospace, defense, medical, and energy. And you see who some of these end customers are. Why additive manufacturing? I suspect this is known to many of you, but if you look at traditional legacy manufacturing, whether that's machining parts, castings, forgings, one of the real benefits of additive is this thing known as a buy to fly ratio. So if you were to machine a 1 kilogram part, you might need to buy 20 kilograms of material. That is a buy to fly ratio of 20 times, given all the waste and the scrap that you would have as you machine and process that part. In the case of additive manufacturing, the buy to fly is about 1.05 times. So very little waste, much more efficient use of material. This is particularly important for these more expensive materials. Likewise, reduced time to production. An amazing statistic, SpaceX, as many of you will know, currently is launching about once a month. On average, between launches, they are making about 20 design changes. This is only enabled because of the fact they print a lot of their parts. You can change your CAD or your design file, in turn change your print, and quickly reiterate and iterate, if you will, these design changes. Likewise, again, this makes for lower volume, higher value parts. Think about rocket thrusters, nozzles, and so forth. Again, back to the case of SpaceX. You've got advanced TRL and MRL, or technical readiness level, manufacturing readiness level. And as Matt Sermon, who heads up the program executive and the industrial base for the submarine industrial base, this is significant. And now we've begun to move additive from prototyping work into production. Again, very important. Where we sit, as I described before, is we are spherical powder as opposed to lower value angular powder, an important distinction. And again, we are dealing with reactive metals such as the refractory and the titanium metals, as opposed to the more commodity non-reactive side. So again, spherical powder, reactive powder, highest value within the powder supply chain. Albeit we purchased our atomizer, the IGA Premium, from a company in Germany called ALD. We have very significant proprietary know-how. On the left, what you see is the powder that was produced when ALD, when we accepted our atomizer from ALD, and they would tell you this was the best titanium powder they'd ever printed. On the right, you see our commercial viable powder. This is after making modifications both to the atomizer itself, as well as significant parameter improvements on our team. As I mentioned, Fred Yelton, who invented gas atomization of titanium 35 years ago, and Eric Bono, who's worked with him for 30 years. So very significant proprietary know-how on our team. The same is true on PM-HIP manufacturing, where our team has done a lot of the key pioneering work over the last 2 decades. On the PM-HIP side, the real challenge that we have now is in forgings and castings. One of Matt's Sermon, who I mentioned again is quoted on the bottom of this page, one of his favorite charts, is a chart that shows the lower 48 of the US, and it's aligned with 48 nodes. His point is, my average part for the Navy takes me 28 months to manufacture. 19 of those months it's waiting in queue, and it's traveling 48 places in the US for various processes. We've got to find a way to shorten that production process. PM-HIP, again, you'll see a letter here momentarily from the Navy, is one of the only mature technologies that can be immediately inserted, and that we can qualify parts for nuclear submarines of this technology. So again, a significant advancement there. These are very, very large parts, far too large to be printed by way of example. And so you're talking about parts that are 5 tons, 10 tons. Again, much, much larger parts. And you can think about various industries, whether it is the maritime industry, whether it is nuclear energy. Obviously, nuclear energy is very important in the US. We all talk about AI. AI is driving these databases. Databases require a lot of energy. And so you're seeing nuclear modular reactors and other things being advanced in the US. And again, PM-HIP is a great technology for that. In particular for PM-HIP, where it's the right choice is where you have very long lead times for forgings. You do get material properties that are forging-like, so much higher material properties than castings. Again, large parts where you typically would have excessive machine waste. So these are ideal parts for PM-HIP. And as I said, these can be very, very large, commonly 10 tons, and very large in size, up to about 60 inches in diameter. This gives you a sense of where we sit. We've got proprietary know-how from the very beginning. So a very advanced numerical model that is used to design the can or the canister, essentially the mold. These molds are then filled with powder, outgassed. We then send these away to be HIP to hot isostatic press. So you're putting this under very high temperature, very high pressure. And then in turn, the near net shape, you've got final machining that is done to get to the end part. Validation on the PM-HIP side, again, we have leading pioneering experience on our team. I would expect over time about 60% of our business will be on the material or the powder side of our business, but a significant portion, about 40% of our business, will be the manufacturing side of our business. So quite unique. You think about other ASX companies, they tend to either be materials or machining, that is manufacturing. Again, we've got this very unique capability in both, and yet they're highly related and synergistic. Talked about the 18 months of or the know-how on our team. We are essentially in stealth mode, working with the U.S. Navy for about 18 months on an active collaboration. We finished that project October of last year. Significant acceptance of that. And by the way, other companies had not been successful achieving those parameters that had been established by the U.S. Navy. In turn, the U.S. Navy convened a meeting in early December at Amaero. That meeting included the two shipbuilders, NAVSEA, Naval Reactors, Naval Nuclear Labs, BPMI, which is the prime contractor for all things nuclear. And essentially that work was laid out to this various supply chains, the progress that we've made. Shortly thereafter, the U.S. Navy, highly unusual, issued a letter, supporting PMHIP as a mature technology that can address the challenges that we have in the forgings and the castings ecosystem, endorsing Amaero and the work that we've done in our technical proficiency, and encouraging us to identify parts that can be moved towards qualification, and again, further relieving the challenges that we have in the forgings and the castings ecosystem. Gives you a sense of where we sit today. Today, our primary capabilities are on producing refractory and titanium powder and PMHIP manufacturing. Over time, what you would expect is it will look at including and expanding our business to include these adjacency capabilities. Back to the challenge the Navy has identified as these parts travel all over the country. And so we've got a real opportunity to continue to build out a more integrated capability at Amaero. I talked earlier about some of the important long-term strategic agreements that we have with Adman, again, Castion being at the forefront of work that has been done with Dr. Yuping Gao on printing not only C103, but other very high value refractory alloys. These refractory alloys, think about niobium alloys that are used in high temperature applications such as hypersonic weapons, strategic missiles. Think about tungsten that is used in munitions, zirconium that is used in nuclear applications, moly, other high temperature applications. So really, really interesting if you think about the thematic opportunities in hypersonic weapon and strategic missiles. Think about space applications, again, very, very high temperature. In the case of LO3D, as I mentioned, the only made in USA equipment OEM for 3D printing. Again, a 5-year exclusive relationship there on the refractory and titanium powder side. Titomic, a leader in cold spray, some very interesting applications as they move to advance not only from repair and maintenance, but qualifying in parts. Some of the interesting opportunities here include titanium pressure vessels, as well as using refractory alloys on thermal protection systems. To qualify those parts, the defense primes are requiring spherical powder. So again, a very interesting exclusive supply agreement there. Knut-Godwin, based outside of Houston, again, significant expansion on their 3D printing, additive manufacturing capabilities, much of which is focused on titanium. And again, there too, we've got a 5-year supply and strategic development agreement. We are less marketing oriented than I might say some ASX companies, in that we do not announce LOIs and MOUs. And yet, to underscore, this doesn't mean we don't have significant contracts, which we do have. So by way of example, in the current latter half of this year, the current fiscal year 26, the back half of this year, the current quarter we're in and next quarter, we have 12 contracts that we will deliver for PMHIP. Those include 4 of which are in the submarine and maritime industrial base, none of which have been announced, 5 of which are in the missile and space ecosystem, none of which have been announced, 1 of which is in aerospace. It has been announced. It's a contract with Boeing. and 2 other industrial contracts that have not been announced. So significant commercial traction. Some of these we would expect that we would announce over time as we get further along, some of which the nature of the contract and given classified nature or the sensitive nature of some of these defense programs likely will not ever be announced. Finally, very quickly to update on the business side, and then a recent announcement this week. We have given guidance for this quarter. It's a very important year for us as we transition to significant revenue. We've given guidance of 18 to $20 million for this current fiscal year. That's about a 370 to 420% increase over the prior year, and much of that has now been contracted. You see the actual revenue the first half of the year, and then almost $10 million that's contracted the back half of the year. Finish the calendar year with over $50 million of cash in our balance sheet, Australian. Expect to be positive adjusted EBITDA in calendar year 27. We've got contracts to atomize 6 different refractory alloys the second half of this year. Significant titanium output increase in the second half of this year. And as I mentioned, 12 contracts for PM HIP. And then finally, just this week, we made an ASX announcement announcing that Amaero, which is currently an Australian company listed on the ASX, we have announced that we are pursuing redomiciliation to Delaware. So we expect to become a Delaware company. That is underway with the necessary shareholder approval and other court approvals and so forth in Australia. And that would position us to pursue a U.S. listing. And we would expect that to occur late calendar year 26, early calendar year 27. And we have retained a BDO to complete a PCA OB audit in conjunction with that. I hope this is very helpful. I've tried to anticipate some of the questions that might be asked. And again, very much appreciate the opportunity to address everyone and hope that you enjoy the rest of the presentations. Thank you again.